Some are born to follow the tide, and some are born to change its course. In 1732, amid the tobacco fields of colonial Virginia, a child was born. No one could have guessed that, 40 years later, this same man would lead a ragtag group of colonies to become the most powerful free nation in the world. His name was George Washington. Washington lost his father when he was just 11 years old. Unlike many of his peers in the colonial gentry, he never attended the elite schools of England. Instead, he taught himself mathematics, geography, and surveying. His teenage years were spent in the wild frontier, trekking through forests, sleeping under the stars, learning to navigate both nature and people. There, he forged a character of calm under pressure, strict self-discipline, and decisive action. At 21, Washington was sent on a dangerous mission to deliver a message to the French in the Ohio Valley. That mission sparked the French and Indian War. In battles like the disaster at Fort Necessity, he faced defeat head-on, each loss shaping him into a more seasoned and determined leader. People began to see, here was a man not easily broken. When Britain imposed harsh taxes and laws on the colonies, Washington initially sought peaceful reform, but as oppression grew, so did his resolve. In 1775, as the Revolutionary War erupted, the Continental Congress appointed him commander-in-chief not because he was the greatest strategist, but because he was the one man the entire nation could trust. Leading the Continental Army was like steering a sinking ship through a hurricane. His soldiers often had no uniforms, little food, and no pay. They faced not only the British Army, but also desertion, disease, and bitter winters. The winter at Valley Forge, 1777 to 1778, was perhaps the darkest. Over 2,000 men died of cold and hunger. Yet Washington walked among their tents, sharing what little bread he had, offering hope. The image of the general in his grey cloak, trudging through snow, became a symbol of leading by example, not by command. On Christmas night, 1776, when defeat seemed certain, Washington took a desperate gamble, crossing the icy Delaware River to surprise the Hessian forces at Trenton. The victory not only brought supplies it rekindled the spirit of the Revolution. In 1781, with French support, Washington trapped the British at Yorktown. General Cornwallis surrendered. America was free. And then Washington shocked the world. He gave up power and returned to his farm at Mount Vernon. King George III is said to have remarked, "If he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world." In 1789, Washington was unanimously elected the first president of the United States. He built the framework of the federal government, held the fragile nation together, and set the standard for the presidency. After 2 terms, he refused a third, establishing the precedent for the peaceful transfer of power, a tradition that defines American democracy to this day. In his farewell address, Washington warned against political division and urged peace with other nations. 2 centuries later, his words still echo like a warning from across time. History remembers Washington as the unshakable general and wise statesman, but behind the legend was a human being with habits, quirks, and struggles that made him relatable. Standing 6 feet 2 inches tall, Washington had a commanding presence. Yet in private, he was soft-spoken, often choosing to listen before speaking. At Mount Vernon, he was not the president or the general, he was the farmer. He loved agriculture, experimenting with new methods, rotating crops, and even building a 16-sided barn for threshing grain. Visitors often found him in simple work clothes, inspecting his fields. He lived by a personal code of conduct, the rules of civility which guided how he treated others. But he also loved to dance. At social gatherings, Washington could stay on the dance floor for hours, moving with surprising grace for a man of war. The famous wooden teeth story is a myth. His dentures were made from a mix of human teeth, animal teeth, and ivory never wood. Still, dental pain plagued him for much of his life, and by the time he became president, he had only one natural tooth left. Washington wrestled with the moral contradictions of his era. He owned enslaved people for much of his life, yet grew increasingly uneasy with slavery. In his will, he took the rare step for a Virginia planter of ordering all the enslaved people he owned to be freed after his wife's death. Faith, though private, was a steady undercurrent in his life. He believed that divine providence guided both his destiny and that of America. Friends recalled moments when he slipped away from camp to pray alone. He valued loyalty above all. His bond with the Marquis de Lafayette was so strong that Lafayette called him an adopted father. When Lafayette was imprisoned during the French Revolution, Washington quietly worked to ensure the safety of his friend's family in America. In December 1799, after riding through his estate in freezing rain, Washington developed a severe throat infection. Within 2 days, the father of his country was gone. His last words were calm and simple: "To as well." George Washington's greatness did not come from perfection. It came from his ability to stand firm in storms, to serve humbly in power, and to remain human through it all. He left behind not just a free nation, but an enduring example: humility in power, steadfastness in trial, and loyalty to the cause of liberty. Today, his face is carved into Mount Rushmore, printed on the $1 bill, and engraved in the memory of a nation that still tells his story not just as the general who won America's freedom, but as the man who lived it.